Okay.
I believe we have everybody here, and I'd like to welcome everybody from the City of Wadsworth, City of Brunswick, and the City of Medina. I recently found out, of course, that this is not the first time that this has occurred in recent history. In the early 90s, I guess, there was a collaboration effort made between the three cities. Again, but that was before my time, and I learned as soon as the article hit the paper that it had occurred. I think Mike Morris was on council at that time for the City of Medina. But I'm glad to see that we could get together this time and hopefully share ideas and share a collective agreement of how we can work together in the future. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody here, and just so everybody knows who is here, we'll just go quickly around the room here and everybody just give an introduction of who you are and what position you hold. I'm, again, John Coyne, the President of City Council.
I'm Mark Colasar, Ward 3 Councilman here in the city.
I'm Bill Lamb. I'm the Councilman at Large in the City of Medina.
Jim Shields, Ward 4 in the City of Medina.
While the Mayor of Medina.
David Williams, Wadsworth City Council at Large.
Ralph Copley, Wadsworth City Council, Ward 1.
Robin Laubaugh, Mayor for the City of Wadsworth.
Patty Haskins, Wadsworth City Council at Large.
I'm Bruce Darlington, Wadsworth City Council, Ward 4.
Robert Patrick, Service Director, Wadsworth.
Tammy Gunther, Clerk of Council.
Norman Bragg, Director of Law of the City of Wadsworth.
Matt Hiscock, Director of Public Safety, City of Wadsworth.
Barb Ortiz, Clerk of Council.
Ron Falcone, Mayor of Brunswick.
Patricia Hannock, Brunswick City Council at Large.
Vince Carl, Brunswick Vice Mayor, Ward 2 Councilman.
Pat McNamara, Director of Public Services, City of Brunswick.
And Tony Bales, City Manager for Brunswick.
Nino Piccoli, Service Director, Medina City.
Brian Hilberg, Ward 1, Medina City Council.
Paul Rose, Council at Large, Medina.
Denny Simpson, Ward 2, Medina City.
Again, thank you. The purpose of this meeting is that we all... Oh, where'd Kathy Patton go?
She's sitting right here.
Kathy Patton, Clerk of Council. She's running around. The purpose of this meeting is that we all do a great job in our own cities within our own boundaries. Now we should look outside of that. I think there's items in the county that if we work collectively, we can provide a better service to each of our residents and maybe a more cost-effective way of providing that service. So I think the idea of sharing that we can hopefully will be garnered from this meeting will assist everybody and maybe take us in a different directions to hopefully assist us in going to the next level. There's a lot of communities out there that do a great job, but I think once you hit a certain level, you can't grow anymore. And the only way to grow is to grow outside your boundaries and grow with collaboration efforts amongst the different jurisdictions. So hopefully we can have some ideas that can benefit each of our communities to move that in that direction. There are different items. Everybody has the agenda that we would like to talk about. One of the first items on the agenda that kind of spurred the discussions is the central processing facility. As everybody knows, a while back, the commissioners submitted or issued an RFP to see if anybody would be interested in the operation of the CPF in the future under various terms. One of the ideas that came up is that each of us makes a large portion of the county. Collectively, we're probably about 60% of the waste that goes into the CPF, or maybe a little bit more. And the question is, we all pay these tipping fees that are approaching $61, $62 a ton. And the question is, well, what can we do about that? Our residents probably deserve better, and there's answers and some kind of ideas that can come up with respect to the central processing facility and the operation of the facility, and how can we lower those tipping fees to our residents. Of course, currently the commissioners own the facility, and it's currently under contract with a private party that operates the facility. That may be the best way to go. I'm not sure. Another way to go is, which we talked about a little bit with Mr. Piccoli, our service director, is a collaborative effort amongst the three jurisdictions to operate the facility. If we take the profit motive out of it, we know that we're operating it for our residents, that we may be able to lower the tipping fees for everybody involved with respect to the operations of the CPF. So the first item, again, is the central processing facility, and I guess in these discussions, I would probably just limit the discussions to the people at the tables, the three cities, because if we open it up to the public, we could probably be here to 10:30 at night, maybe longer. I think we just want to share the ideas, and if there's any other comments afterwards that the public would like to discuss with the cities, that would be a great time to do it, and maybe there's a different forum we can do since we have so many representatives from each of the communities here. But I guess I'd like to open it up for discussion regarding the central processing facility and any thoughts or ideas that anyone has with respect to the ongoing operations of it. I know we have some concerns on those tipping fees. What would you like to see? What have you heard from your residents in your community? Just so we can have a direction of exactly where we want to go. Anybody? I'm not going to talk for 2 hours. I know there's a lot of ideas out there regarding this, I can tell you that. Don't be shy. I mean, this is an open meeting. I think it's important that we discuss what we believe to be the result. Maybe the answer is not obvious. Maybe the answer is obvious. But the question is to spur the discussion to discuss the future of how we view the future as the city is contributing to the central processing facility. Yes, sir.
They have this new contract that apparently the county is going to award soon. So I'm not sure whether we have any options right now. Perhaps in the future when this contract that they're going to award is up. But right now, is there something that we could do?
Well, I don't believe the county has made a determination, and I know we have two commissioners here, Mr. Hamley, where's everybody at? Where'd they all go? And Mr. Fredericks over in the back. I don't believe the commissioners have yet made a determination of who to select, and that's still open. And I guess it's never too late, so to speak, if there's something that comes about that would be a better option for the county. I don't know if there is or isn't, but you're correct. If there's not, there's a next time, and things take time, and it's better to start discussing it now rather than waiting. Okay. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I believe it's on the agenda for tomorrow's commissioners' meeting the county will make a pitch for one vendor or the other based on the RFPs that came back. So we might know something by 2 o'clock tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You talked about options. We have a couple bids that came back to the commissioners and that they're evaluating, I assume. And once Amy and the sanitary engineer decides what the recommendation to the board will be, we have to wait and see, play the wait and see game with them. There's another option to throw the bids out and go back out to bid again. Mm-hmm. Clearly, the bid packages were higher than the city's expected. With very little wiggle room to lower our tip fees, so that's a concern of Brunswick, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the answer to the question is also a time frame or a term on those contracts. I think they start at 5 years, and I think one goes to 20 years, depending on how you want to select your operator of that facility. But in looking forward, of course, we're all concerned about the tipping fees and the recycling of the materials that go into the CPF and not into the landfill to help offset those costs of operating the facility. And I know in the past it's been a low percentage, lower than I think some of us or most of us would like to see. And there has to be other ways to increase that besides just going through the CPF and having people select out the materials that come through the processing facility. Because I think our goal as the cities would be to lower that tipping fee as much as possible so our residents are not impacted. As fees keep going up and up, as we know in the city of Medina, these enterprise funds that everybody has, there's only so far you can keep going back to the public and raising these fees. And then if a need ever did arise to raise an income tax or do something of that type, it's more difficult, of course. So I don't know the answer to the question, but one of the discussions, as I mentioned earlier, was getting together through a collaborative effort, whether now or in the future, to see if the cities have the ability to operate the central processing facility through a council of governance type of arrangement. whereby there's representatives from each of the cities that serve on some type of board that then operates the facility. Because if you think about it, the people who work at the facility now, we know that. We know the facility's been operating. The cost of operations would be, we already know that answer. Now, whether or not it would be union employees or not, it's another question, depending on how it affect the cost. But again, there's a profit motive involved for the operations of the CPF, of which the cities would not have a profit motive. We have a motive of providing a service to each of our residents and providing the lowest tipping fees as we can possibly obtain, and also to provide the largest amount of recycling that is possible, whether that be a combination of some type of curbside pickup. All these costs are unknown, of course. These are just ideas to help people separate the trash at their residence, maybe through different color bags. So when the bags go to the CPF, people can spot those bags and they know if it's paper, if it's plastics, or what have you. There's many different ideas that can be derived and try to save money for our residents. And I don't know how everybody feels about if it's possible in the future, trying to get involved in that, trying to get involved in trying to assist in trying to save the current operator, whoever that may be, different ways to lower the cost associated with the delivery of their service. So I don't know if there's any ideas with respect to that.
John,
Yes.
Mr. President, I guess I'd like to reach out to the other members of council here. If you've had constituents that, especially ones that have moved into our communities, they hear we have a recycling center, that I think assume that our percentages are higher. Are there concerns from your residents that the CPF isn't? We have, I believe, 1 or 2 in the state of this type of facility. I might be wrong by 1 or 2, but is there any concerns from your residents that recycling rate isn't as high as it should be for a facility that we have? Yes.
Well, the only concern I've had is when they removed the igloos. Some of my neighbors were upset because they used the igloos for the glass, and now they're gone. And they were upset about that. But other than the percentage of recycling, I haven't heard any complaints about that or concerns.
Because what I've experienced is new members or new community members have moved in, they heard we have recycling, and they think it's great. This county is up and up on their recycling. But when we pull out, to me, I think measly recycling rates, I think it's almost a slap in the face when they find out how low our rates actually are. And I'll speak alone here. I mean, I think us as a county would want to be couple more steps in the future now on recycling. Some might be fine with landfills and just take it to the landfill and be done with it. But as Mr. Coyne says, I think us as different communities still have to unite as one to figure out how we can be more efficient in our communities and pass that along to the CPF. I mean, if it comes down to where we have to separate a little bit in our community to make it easier for the CPF to recycle that product at a higher rate, which in turn is going to give us lower tipping fees because they're working less to get that product out to market and bring that recycling rate up, I think it's really important. And I think in this day and age, as younger generations become older, and a lot of them already think that recycling's key to communities and the future of our country. I think it's something we really need to look at, and I hope that we as a team can come up with something to work with the county to have a better result than what we do now. Thank you.
I don't think that it's a bad idea to necessarily consider working with Central Plastic Facility as a municipal opportunity. But I think regardless of that, I think efficiency is good. And I think the council of government idea is a wonderful idea to consider regardless, and put something in place so that we can address items like this and be prepared for all opportunities that we have.
Well, I agree with that. As an elected official, each of us, we understand that the residents just want results. They really don't differentiate from where are you from, am I in the city of Medina or outside in the townships of Medina, probably the same with Brunswick and Wadsworth. They just say, well, I'm in the city of Wadsworth, when they're really not. So they just want results, and I guess our job, as I view it, is to try to find solutions to problems or better ways to provide a service than we have in the past. Doing it the way we always have done it is generally not the way to go on everything. As time goes on, things change and technologies change, and there's opportunities. I remember going to meetings a while back where there was opportunities with respect to using the waste, whether it be organic waste or otherwise, to provide a fuel. Of course, if you were able to provide that fuel, you can be able to use that fuel to run your vehicles in your city. Now, wouldn't that be great that the trash we are generating can turn into fuel and we could use that for some other type of processes, which again is building on that recycling idea with respect to all the trash that goes within the CPF. But there are many ideas, and some of them are not easy. Some of them are very complicated, of course, like trying to get together as three governments to operate a facility. There will be many different ideas, but I think the ultimate goal would be the same. So those are the struggles that we would have to wrestle with as different communities. But again, we're all in the same boat, so to speak. We may be on different sides of it, but I think we're all should head in the same direction with respect to that. Now, I mentioned organic waste. There is organic waste that goes to the CPF that is also used and recycled. Specifically, currently in the fall, are leaves. Now, I don't know how many, or if your cities transport your leaves or what your leaf program is with respect to delivery of those leaves to the CPF, but there's another avenue as far as delivery of a material that is then sold and recycled. And all those monies that are being used on those products should go back into lowering our tipping fees. And I'm not too sure how that goes. I never did an audit of the books. I'm not sure from the current operator or the commissioners if they know all those answers, but these are questions that are always raised, and maybe sometimes the answers are difficult, but we have to address them. Does anybody else have any ideas with respect to the CPF?
You want to give the commissioners an opportunity to...
Yes, go ahead.
Why can't we come up with like a task force made up of members of all three, cities to, look at some of these questions and try and get some answers and look at, forming a council of government? I think that's where it should start at.
I think that's a great idea, and in speaking with the mayor and Mr. Piccoli, our service director, I believe the service directors or city managers should be involved in that discussion. I think you had some discussions, Nino. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct, Mr. Coyne. We've had great discussion with myself, my counterpart, Pat McNamara, and Robert Patrick. So we've had good discussion with respect to a COG. It was a little late with respect to the CPF with the bidding and the timing. But again, going forward, I think that's a great concept, and we should entertain future discussions and continue the effort.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And Mayor, I don't know, with your input too, of who should actually serve on that task force and reviewing it, but my recommendation would be at least the service directors or maybe the city manager and maybe a representative from each of the councils or another representative from the administration of each of the cities.
Yeah, that would be fine with us. As Nino said, they spent a great deal of time discussing it. Wadsworth lost their service director midstream. We chatted with Chris Easton, who had a great deal of knowledge about it. And then since Michael's been here, they've continued to meet. But in addition to that, I know Brunswick had a tornado and some flooding issues up there, and we've got the day-to-day demands that just did not let us put the package together in time for this latest bid.
No, that's understandable. Anybody else have any questions, comments with respect to the CPF, Brunswick? Anybody else? Vince?
I kind of agree with what you all said about putting a council together among the three cities. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a first step in trying to basically combine our forces and, use, instead of just one group or have all three bodies, I think you get some great ideas that come out of all three of these bodies.
Well, I guess the ultimate goal, of course, would be if we provide the amount of waste that I believe we provide, at least 60%, our goal would not be to have the highest rates to our residents, which in turn, the 40% of the waste that's provided by the townships and surrounding communities, they would end up with a lower tipping fee also, would be most likely to occur. But again, how that is structured, the task force is a good idea to figure out if, how, when, who's involved, what's the financial obligations of each community, how would the service be provided with the capital equipment that's needed for it, the facility itself located at the commissioners own the facility. But again, there's operation as far as trucks and vehicles and also the equipment within the CPF that separates the the waste and the various byproducts that are then transported and sold. So, Mark, you have a question?
Real quick, I just would like to hear from the other communities of what their yard waste program is now. I mean, the city of Medina, we suck up the leaves, we take it to the CPF. I mean, you still have yard cuttings, grass cuttings, branches, things of that nature. Do you guys have a central facility of some sort within your community that divides it up and then takes it to the CPF? Or do you have your own composting or anything along those lines that, I don't know if one of the service directors, city manager, anybody would like to just let us know what you guys do?
Yeah, in Wadsworth, we have, we do the collection, the city does a collection, takes it to a city-owned dump location, and then we have a contractor that actually comes and picks up all of the leaves and the debris and removes it for free of charge.
Now, do you take it to the CPF, or is that, do you take it to the process, the contractor, or no?
No,
Okay.
the contractor takes it and uses it at their pleasure.
It makes
Doesn't
compost.
Right, makes compost. Takes it away at no cost for us. We don't have the transportation costs to take it to the CPF and the time and involved in that.
Okay.
Similarly, Brunswick does the same thing. We have a local vendor in town. We truck our leaves too. We have a leaf program. We suck our leaves and take them to this vendor, and then he trucks them down to Copley for processing.
Thank you.
Wadsworth, anything else?
No, we used to actually pay to have that material removed, and now someone comes and takes it for free, so it's no cost to the city. The conversation about the CPF, as Mr. Piccoli had mentioned, the three service directors, Mr. McNamara and myself, and Mr. Piccoli had been meeting and talking about what can be done at this point, because the RFP was obviously issued, and we actually met with the county, and we voiced the concerns for the COG and for wanting some time to do that. So I think, as Mr. McNamara had mentioned, the bid team is going to present their recommendations to the commissioners tomorrow, so we'll know at that point more about how they're planning to proceed.
Well, correct. And of course, with the two commissioners here listening to what the cities are talking about, hopefully in their decision they could, I guess, not choose a 20-year contract. Maybe if you had to choose a shorter-term contract to provide an opportunity to see if we can put something together. I guess the question is, in rebidding things, I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. It does take time and it does take energy and a little bit of cost to go out with an RFP, but who knows what ideas can be generated and what solutions can be done. And I guess I'll let the opportunity, since the commissioners here, if they have anything to add with respect to the CPF facility, since they're intimately involved with that at this time. Well, you are an elected official, so I guess you qualify to give a comment.
We do have the presentation of the aid, taking presentation of the two bids that we received tomorrow after the commissioner meeting, and we'll go forward.
Okay. Yeah, we appreciate it, and hopefully the discussion here would help maybe aid in your decision process. I mean, if there's any way to look at the bids and make a determination as far as term is concerned. What I'm hearing from everybody is just a shorter term, just to provide another opportunity to see if the cities can do anything in the future that would be helpful.
And just for reference, Pat McNamara is on the Solid Waste Policy Committee. He's done a nice job making sure that the city's interests are looked at.
Good. We appreciate that. Okay, is there anything else on the tipping fees or CPF before we move forward?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Lamb?
I just want to say a couple things regarding what Councilman Colasar mentioned, which I think are really important. I think to, first of all, I would hope that when the new contract comes out, that we'll be able to look at a facility that does a better job generally at recycling. But as much as that's important is one of the concerns I think that you raised just a second ago about when the igloos disappeared. And when the igloos disappeared, which gave people, and we all realize that most of what we do is really to try to provide the very best service we can to our constituents. And the igloos were an important part of that service. And when those igloos disappeared, I got a number of phone calls and people said, hey, I took my glass there and there's no igloo anymore. And there was no notice that the igloos disappeared, and I understand now why they're gone, and the difficulty in finding a vendor to take the glass and the cost of getting a machine to grind the glass up whatsoever. But it would have been helpful to know that ahead of time, so that we could inform people, don't set your glass aside, because there is no place to take your glass because the igloos are gone. And then recently, in Medina, the Medina Paper Recycling took paper, all mixed paper. You could take your paper to Medina Paper Recycling, dump it in the bins, and they simply took the paper. And my understanding from that company is that the cost of taking that paper for them was about $30 a ton, and they got about $40 a ton. So they were doing that generally as a service, not to make money. And overnight, those bins disappeared. And so I got the same kind of phone calls I got about the igloos. What happened to the paper collection at Medina Paper Recycling, because it's gone. And lastly, the third thing is this, and Mark mentioned it, and I think it's a serious issue. Not just people that recently move into our communities, but people that have lived here presume that there is an aggressive recycling reclamation program going on. And I was talking to somebody on the weekend who's lived in town for quite some time, who thought everything got recycled. And I think that perception needs to be addressed. Whatever we do going forward, hopefully it will be better. But whatever we do going forward, I think the public needs to be informed or educated that when you throw your things into the trash, helter-skelter, it isn't all getting recycled, and a huge percentage of it is just going in a transfer truck and going into a landfill. And when people know that, then I think, as Mark said, they begin to look at it more as a personal issue, that they want to be responsible and try to find some other way to do source separating or make sure that they're doing a better job of recycling, because they will no longer just presume that it's all taken care of. So I think those issues are important, and as we go forward, my hope would be that we come up with the means to do a better job of recycling, and not just for the good reasons, but also to keep the tipping fees down. That is our objective.
Well, thanks. I think what we'll do going forward is maybe coordinate with the presidents of the councils, the mayors, and the city managers to get a task group together, not too large, of course, to discuss the current operations and maybe how we can assist in the more efficient operations or more cost-effective way to deliver that service for our residents, and then talk about the council of governance concept and see if that has any legs, or it may be too difficult. Maybe, who knows what the answer would be. So I guess I'll leave it with that, and if there's nothing else, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Yes, Mr. Carl.
I would like to make a request to the commissioners. I mean, I'm hearing from a lot of the folks here that we feel excluded, and when we hear information, I didn't know anything about the igloos when they disappeared until I started getting phone calls. We hear very, very, very shortly before their tipping fees go up. I mean, I get tons of phone calls about that, and it's not something that I had anything to do with. I mean, if we're going to get beat up for this, at least give us some forewarning on it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 3, the collaborative efforts on high-cost services. As everybody knows, cost of services keep going up and up and up, and there's always a shortfall revenue to cover those costs of services. There's different things that we have done in Medina, and I'll let the mayor talk to a few of them, but one of the things we've done, and I know that the city of Brunswick is approaching this concept also, is the Joint Economic Development District, and be able to collaborate with our surrounding townships to provide services that would aid in with respect to delivery of services and also sharing of revenues within the JED district areas. Now that's with your townships that surround you. Kind of what we're talking here is the services that each of us provide to our residents. How can the cities work together, or is there something that the cities do, whether it be a position that's part-time, really can't go full-time? All 3 cities have this position. They provide a service that may be able to be done countywide, or when I say countywide, between the political subdivisions of Brunswick, Medina, and Wadsworth, to provide a service to our residents, and we can share in that cost so that the residents receive that service, whether or not on a part-time basis or on a full-time basis. But I think, Mayor, I think you see some things that possibly could be done through collaboration to help stave off the increases in these costs of services.
Yeah, I guess I'm not real clear on where the level of high costs of services are. What we did probably 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years ago, time flies, the commissioners put together representation from each of the cities, and we put together all of the different equipment possessed from each of us, as well as our willingness to share, whether it be share just the specialized piece of equipment or share the specialized piece of equipment along with the operator, and what the parameters for those things were. And the reasoning behind that, it was coordinated through the commissioner's office and EMA, but shared then with service, as well as just general, predominantly service, but in general, so that each city doesn't have to buy the same piece of high-end equipment. But we know if Brunswick has one, Wadsworth has something else, and the city has something else, and those are available for us to share, that again, it keeps us from each having those capital expenses. In the city locally here, we've partnered with the schools to provide school resource officers at no charge to them in exchange for them providing IT services for us that we generally would have to contract out for. That was a high dollar expense. It was something we had no control over, whereas with the schools doing it, we do. I know for years I worked, with the police departments of each of the cities. There was a time when the city had three K-9 units that were sent throughout the county as needs arose, and instead of everybody having to have a dog, and then now our city doesn't have dogs, but a number of other departments do. So I think there's a lot of that collaboration and cooperation going on already, but I would be open to discuss any further methods to do that.
Well, I think one of the items, as I think we've heard in many programs on TV with the candidates, is, for example, the salt purchases, that we all have to buy salt, unfortunately, since we live in Northeast Ohio, and maybe there's a benefit of collaboratively getting a larger tonnage and a cost per ton lower. If we collectively do it, maybe we are able to save a few dollars a ton on that. I'm not sure, but these are some of the ideas. I don't know if anybody else, Brunswick, do you have, from your services, do you see any potential opportunities from what you provide to your residents that a collaborative effort may be helpful?
Just to expand on the mayor's comments a little bit, the shared equipment inventory was born out of a meeting that I was in with Commissioner Hambly several years ago with Jim Rokakis during the foreclosure crisis, when we had all these vacant foreclosures and none of the cities knew what to do about them. Lawns weren't being mowed, and so I had mentioned I had partnered with ODOT on several stream cleaning projects where they lent us equipment in order for them to allow us to store salt in our barns, because we're on the far north end of the county. And they could salt their districts with the salt that was stored in our barns without having to deadhead all the way back to Route 18. So with the assistance of the commissioners, we were able to put together that inventory list of equipment, and I think Nino and I have partnered with the bulldozers and several other pieces of equipment, and we've helped out Hinckley and Brunswick Hills. I'm not so certain everyone takes advantage of the program because they're not aware of it. There's not been a whole lot of outreach. Additionally, we've got some pushback from some of the townships who feel that there might be some legal ramifications if someone were to borrow a backhoe from us and break it. And I'm one of those people that operates on a gentleman's agreement. If you take my toy and break it, then I expect you to buy me a new toy. But I understand I'm not an attorney, but for those in the room, they make a lot of money doing those sorts of things. So I agree. There's opportunities for us in many different facets, particularly safety services. I think we all spend a lot of money on hook and ladders and patrol cars and dispatch centers. I think we need to start talking about collaborative efforts on dispatching and those sorts of things.
That you're correct on that. The one idea that I was also thinking about is that we all have income tax collections. We use CCA. I'm not sure if Wadsworth, you guys use RETA or CCA. You do. Well, the question would be, why can't all three of us cities do it together and collect the income tax and share in that cost? Because we pay, I think, CCA close to $500,000, I'm not sure, about $500,000 a year. And it's like, well, we could hire a few people for that. And if we have both communities involved, maybe the economies of scale, we'll be able to do the income tax collection collectively, and maybe that'll save us some money. I don't know how that would work, but it seems like if you need to hire somebody and we're paying $500,000, and I'm sure Wadsworth is probably paying close to that amount, so that's $1 million right there, and you're doing some. It seems like we can provide there's been a lot of complaints regarding CCA as far as cooperation and gathering of information, and why couldn't we do it better? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we can, and maybe that's one way we can collaborate.
Mr. President, if I may, we're happy to take $500,000 from you guys and $500,000 from Wadsworth and hire a few folks.
Well, the goal is not to pay the same $500,000, I guess. It'd pay a little bit less than that. But Wadsworth, do you have any ideas or?
Yeah, I think collaboration in the last 5 years has become a real well-known buzzword in government and industry because of, obviously the economy and how everything is slowed down and everyone's doing more with less. I think it can work in a lot of different ways. I think, as the mayor said, I think it's something to look at. I've seen it work in the past. I've been involved with different collaboration efforts in the past. Wadsworth does provide services to areas like in the township, like you had mentioned, but as far as, sharing different resources or providing services from the different cities that have to be looked at, if it's efficient, if it's effective, if it saves money, if there's a good business case, then yeah, but those things need to be looked at for sure. The equipment is a great idea, a great way to share resources like that. I know I talked to our vehicle maintenance manager, and we haven't utilized that in the last couple of years. And like Mr. McNamara said, a lot of people probably don't know what's out there, or it's just not in the front of your mind, right? You're just thinking you need this. Internally we collaborate, which has been a nice thing for me to see, where we purchase equipment and multiple divisions purchase that together, and so it's an equipment that they don't need it full time. So that's been good, and maybe something like that could be worked out in the future. I know the relationships are real strong between the three cities. Mr. McNamara mentioned dispatch. I know dispatch is a commonly collaborative effort that's out there. A lot of different communities, a lot of different counties have done that in the past. You mentioned salt purchases. We're in a consortium, and I'm sure the other cities are too, that we buy through that. So we do that. There's a lot of other buying consortiums out there that municipalities can get involved with that go out there, and I mean, there's a state bid obviously, so that's one consortium already. There's some other consortiums that out there that they pull companies from around the country and do the same thing as like the state bid process, so you can leverage all the different buying powers together. So it's a very good, it's something good that the government has. If there's other ways that materials that could be purchased together between the three cities, maybe that would be an idea. Probably not a great cost savings, and then you have other transportation costs, but maybe that would be something to look at.
Anybody from Medina here to have?
Thank you. Along those lines, there's a lot of things that would be feasible, a lot of things aren't. I mean, we can't share police cars, fire apparatus. I mean, if there was a big ticket item that your community, our community was looking and purchasing, the need may be if we could, get the three service directors and the mayors or city managers together. And I think there are a lot of things. I know in the last few years we bought a camera system for our stormwater sewers. I don't know if you guys all have your own or not, but a purchase like that, so if we could sit there and say, well, we've got a list of the needs of all three communities. The camera would, I'm just using that as an example. Medina could buy the camera, and next year or the next 5 years, if there was another large piece of equipment that the service departments or some other area in the city that we could share, because it's not going to be used every single day. I like the idea of sharing, especially the cost, and there's no need for us to each have, in my opinion, some of these big ticket items when you're not utilizing, or we're not utilizing that piece of equipment on a weekly basis or a daily basis, I think there could be huge money saved. Fire apparatus, you look at ladder trucks, they're up to, what, $1 million now, Mayor? I know probably each, right now, city has their own, a ladder apparatus. They used to last 20 years, 25 years. We know that that's not the case anymore, but collaboratively we could, look at down the road if we could get this team together and say this is our needs in the next 10 years and our needs and so on. So I like your idea, and we all are doing that within house.
I'm going to approach these guys real soon because we need a mower for out in the rural areas, on the streets, something that we don't use that often, but it's a high dollar to buy a tractor with a long arm and all those kind of things. But something like a ladder truck, have to look at what the feasibility is. If it's an emergency, something to be used in emergencies, you don't have time to go to Brunswick or, call Brunswick to have them drive down that piece if it's something that's needed ASAP. I know that in the past, during emergency situations, equipment has been shared and crews have been shared, mutual aid, basically. But then a lot of times our close proximity might hurt that, because if there's a bad storm that goes through us, most likely it might go through the whole area. But it might not, like when Brunswick had their tornadoes and items. So I think something needs to be looked at.
Well, and along the same lines, as long as the commissioners are here, and I'm grateful for that, gentlemen. I'm glad you're here, even though maybe you feel like you've been taking a beating on the first. You really haven't. We appreciate you being here. When we start talking, mutual purchasing, we know that it would take, when you talk about, I'm just going to keep using fire apparatus. The three cities have, ladder trucks. Rescue trucks is another, heavy rescue truck. I'm sure each of our communities have our own rescue trucks. Now $500,000, $750,000 to purchase one. If you drove around to the surrounding townships, most of the surrounding townships have spent, $500,000, $750,000 within the last 5 years for, a heavy rescue that may get utilized 1, 2, 3 times a year. So when you mention mutual aid, we can always call mutual aid, but countywide, and I'm getting away from our agenda just for the 3 cities, but if the commissioners got more involved as far as the purchasing power, and it's hard to dictate to townships and villages, but there's really, for me, it's almost nonsense for a community that is right next to Wadsworth, Brunswick, or Medina to go out and, have their taxpayers spend $500,000 for a piece of equipment that is utilized a few times a year and that is less than 5 miles away from their township. So I like the idea of collaborative efforts.
I was just going to mention, I think what I'm hearing and what I'm aware of is that there is a lot of collaboration that's already going on, but we certainly can do better. There's a lot that has gone on behind the scenes, and some of the things have been mentioned here. And I think with Wadsworth, we're fortunate because we do have a lot of divisions that, as has been mentioned, we're able to utilize within departments. But certainly, we are all certainly interested in collaborating further. And so I think the main thing is for each of us to be aware of that potential for collaboration, potential for savings of dollars. And in having that kind of almost a primary thought when we have a large dollar item that potentially could be utilized by others if it's something that you don't utilize on a day-to-day basis. So I think the nice thing is we have good working relationships among mayors, good working relationships among the service directors, and so that need is we can express it freely and feel there's some confidence there but I think we can always do better, and I think there's areas that we can expand upon. So I think this is a good friendly reminder for that.
Being a past fire chief, I think it's important not just to look at equipment costs, but you have to look at gloves, self-contained breathing apparatus, tools. I mean, anytime you put the name fire service on something, the price goes up tenfold. But if you go in there as a joint purchasing agreement and standardize the equipment that we use between the 3 cities, or, you know, with the townships, with the villages and everything, we could go out and bid and get, you know, drastic savings, you know, on that type of stuff, because we were working on that with Guilford Township when I was chief and everything, trying to, you know, come up with some of these programs. But the more people you have involved, the greater your buying power, you know, which makes a lot of sense. You're buying.
Right.
And that could be for almost anything like we do in the city hall with computers and things of that type. I don't know what the level is of how many you have to buy to get a great discount, but I mean, we all use those services. And kind of as a segue into the next item, I mean, one of the things that we all do and we try to strive to be better at is applying for grants, whether it be state grants or any kind of federal grants or anything of that type. And, you know, we tried to have a while ago, probably 10 years ago, a grant administrator here at the city of Medina, but it just wasn't a full-time position at that time. And I don't know if the cities have the same issues. But, you know, leading into the CHIP grant that we collectively applied for, now there's something that maybe we can collaboratively get an individual who would seek grants for all of us, if that's possible, or administer grants that we obtain more effectively and efficiently than going out individually as the consultants. I mean, I don't know, but we really don't need a full-time one. Nobody does, but maybe we can use one together.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea right there, because grant writing is something that is so important, and it takes a lot of time. There's an expertise there, and many of this, even the larger communities, don't have grant writers on staff, and I know a lot of them, they can pay for themselves real easily. So if you could collaborate on something like that, would be a real nice idea. Economic development too would be another way to collaborate between, and we've had some discussions with the Medina Economic Development Committee about doing something with some staffing that way.
Yeah, that helps. Do something.
I was just going to, before we get into grants, I had a question. I know Wadsworth, and this is reference to energy. You purchase, or you have your own distribution within the city limits, but you still purchase generation. Is that correct? And then Brunswick, you're with NOPEC for both gas and electric. Is that correct? And the city of Medina, we're with First Energy Solutions on their electric aggregation program, I think for another 4 or 5 years. And the mayor and I are both looking into doing some kind of gas, something similar to First Energy, but with natural gas. But I guess the question I throw out there, one is NOPEC, how is that working for you? Have you compared what the average Joe's paying compared to the NOPEC program you're under? I mean, do you see a significant savings? And then the Wadsworth, would you guys be open to, if it's generation that we're looking at for us right now would be natural gas, would that be something that you would be interested, or that's a topic we can bring up for something in the future? I know the county has gone out and they've have something in place, but I didn't know, I guess start with Brunswick, how is NOPEC working out for you? Because that was when we looked at First Energy Solutions 4 years ago, that was one of the proposals I had, is to join NOPEC like you did. Do you see a significant savings, and is it worth joining? I mean, you know, there's one things that go out and try to save residents money, but are the results there that you're actually doing that?
Yes, quite frankly, it's between 6 and 8% annually on our energy. With the Marcellus shale deposits now, it's not going to be coming up from Louisiana, so it's going to be coming right here from the state of Ohio. So you're going to see a natural gas cost lower than ever before, and it's going to drive everything else. So NOPEC's sort of the leader of the industry, and now you're seeing all these other consortiums being started because they were the first in the game. They were the first ones into Columbus to form this Council of Government. And as a result of that, every community that's joined has enjoyed that 6 to 8% savings. So there's no disputing those numbers. I mean, you can do an apples-to-apples comparison on the NOPEC website and sort of decide for yourself.
And Wadsworth, are you in any kind of special contract now with either electric generation or gas that you could share with us? And is it working for you, or are you guys looking to maybe do something different?
Well, as electric, we're a little different than most communities where we actually provide electric communities. So we're a distributor of electric. So we bring the power in, and we're through an organization that provides electric to 130 municipalities in the Midwest. So that's worked out really well for us over a long-term history. So that's been very beneficial. On the gas side, we're gas aggregation. We turn over to we pass on to our residents, and we got a real favorable rate this year. So that's worked out favorably as well to us.
So you have something in place gas-wise with?
We do.
Is it Columbia Gas down there, or is it through them, or is it a private?
Yeah, it's Dominion, Interstate Gas. So we do the gas aggregation program.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything else? Yes, Mr. Carl.
Going back to one of the things you brought up earlier, we actually checked the cost of being in CCA as opposed to doing it ourselves, and our cost is a third lower than CCA was.
That's wonderful, but how about the rest of us here? I mean, we'd like to get involved in that somehow, and I guess if we do it on our own, I mean, we're just going to be duplicating costs.
It's not to say that we couldn't have a central collection agency among the three communities.
I mean, that may be a benefit. It could definitely assist.
I mean, all of us to provide it separately is a cost that's probably prohibitive, but to say we're going to do a central collection agency and contribute either employees or money toward this facility, or be able to do it. I mean, we even provide the ability we do taxes for our residents, and I'm not sure if you guys are able to do that at your communities.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the ratio between the commercial industrial taxpayers and the residential taxpayers. Maybe collectively that the numbers may work out to provide a more efficient service. And I guess the ultimate goal is to answer those questions, provide the service to the residents who always have questions and concerns, and they want their questions answered rather than be delayed. And when they don't get answered, it's not CCA's fault, it's the city's fault. So that's what we found out. So if there's a better way to provide that or build that mousetrap, so to speak, that would be great to do that. Is there anybody else?
Yeah, I had one more item. And I will apologize to the service directors because I may be misspeaking on this, so don't beat me up outside. I looked at an idea that it's possible that we all do service on our vehicles. You know, some of us service the ambulances, some of us don't, some of us put out to other services. I'd be interested to see as to, between the three cities, as to what we could or couldn't collaborate to have it get done all in-house without having to actually outsource stuff.
I think, and the mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, we had discussions with this respect to specialized mechanical technical skills that you may need once for a specific vehicle, and if we share those vehicles, it would be great to have one person who understands how to do that, but sometimes it becomes cost prohibitive to have that individual just for one vehicle. That's why sometimes they're shipped out to some other type of service provider.
Right, we have a mechanics service bay and 4 mechanics. So we had one trained specifically in safety vehicles, fire trucks, because they have to be certified to work on that type of equipment. We've opened that up to the surrounding townships. There are times that those folks have extra hours, and instead of wiping off their tools or doing preventative maintenance, if there were other things that we could do for the other cities, we have opened it up to the schools, and we've done some work on some of their vehicles in addition to the townships surrounding us. And then the other thing that we did with our schools is the diagnostic equipment that is required for some of those larger vehicles. We bought one set, and the schools bought another set because we both had the makes of each intermixed. So then if we need to do that diagnostic and it's the one we don't have, we take it over to the schools. If they need that diagnostic, they bring it to the city. And it works out better for us because we're half a mile apart, the school bus garage versus our city garage. We're on the same street a half a mile apart. So there are a lot of efficiencies that are there already. Can fill in if I missed anything, but we're always open for more business, or if we can help any of you out. We've even helped nonprofits like Feeding Medina County. They had a problem with their delivery truck, and we assessed it for them to at least give them an opinion of what they were being told. Was it correct? Is that what needed to be replaced? Did they want us to do it at hourly rate, or did they want to take it back to where they had it first analyzed?
Mayor, you've covered it well. Again, with the collaborative efforts with the schools, it's worked well. The city's been served well, as well as the school with the diagnostics, and I would open it up to Brunswick and Wadsworth as well. If we've helped out Montville, likewise, with some diagnostics on some of their trucks, and we work collaboratively with ODOT as well, and it works.
Is there anything else with respect to the sharing of the services before we move on to the CHIP grant that was recently sought out and obtained, and we all obtained a little bit more money? And I think, the Mayor, you were pretty much leading that here at the city. If you want to go over that, and maybe there's other opportunities that each city's trying to approach now that maybe we could do this again or do it in a different way, either with grants, as we talked about, or some type of program or a grants program, who knows?
So each of the cities individually had been doing the CHIP program for a period of years, and the state offered an incentive to go from $350,000 a year per city to $400,000 a year if there was a partnering or collaboration with one or more cities. And so the three cities got together. The city of Medina offered and was accepted to be the grant coordinator, grant administrator, partially because we were centralized, but as well because somebody had to do it. Somebody had to take it over. And we have a young lady in our community development department that has done this for years, and I think we work with the same consultant on it, so there was nothing missing with that. But we were able to get $50,000 for each community. The only thing that I asked was that it was important to me that the individual communities review their projects and submit the paperwork for us to approve the payment of it, because it didn't make sense for us to send our staff to Wadsworth or Brunswick or whatever. So we got that worked out with each of your representatives for the CHIP program, and as a result, collectively we brought $150,000 into the county as a result of that. And I think it just gives us that much more ability to help more people with it.
And is either city aware of any other programs that maybe we could take advantage of? Come across anything, heard anything? I think we should keep our, eyes and ears open to see what's available, because the state government, to a lesser extent, the federal government maybe to more, is always trying to find ways for valuable programs to provide grants and additional funding. The question is finding them and be able to take advantage of them, because there's always money available somewhere. The question is how do you gear it and drive it towards your community is more difficult. And I think we all know, at least at the state level, it's been more and more difficult with the state funds to the municipalities being cut over the years. We're trying to find ways to bridge those gaps of the cutting in the funding to each of our budgets, and trying to figure ways how do we replace that money in our general fund. I think we were hit to about $1 million. So we're trying to, figure ways of how do we cover that gap? Where does that money come from, and how can we still provide the same service to our residents? And the CHIP programs or other programs at the state or federal level maybe is a way at least to get some of that money back to provide the services to different segments of the population in each of our communities. Does anybody else have anything else with respect to the grants or any other types of programs? All right, we have two left. We have the 911 revenues and casino revenues. Now, this is not a time, I guess, we're just coming up with ideas, and maybe we can have some questions answered on this, because maybe there's a little bit of confusion of where the money should go. Why aren't the cities receiving a proportionate share of those funds? Maybe there's a reason that is a valid reason, maybe not. But again, we all recognize that as cities, we are part of the county, and we do make up the lion's share of probably not the lion's share, but a good portion of the population of the county with the three of us. getting about 80 to 90,000 residents of the county of Medina. And I know there's been discussion and there's been members of the committees with respect to the 911 revenues and the amounts of money received by the county. And I think we all received the sheets with respect to the previous years and the current years of the wireless 911 fund and the total receipts and fees generated with respect to the wireless 911. Now, of course, the location of these individuals throughout the county maybe can be determined, maybe not. I'm not an expert at that. But the distribution, I think we receive as a city of Medina, Mayor, is it $5,000 or what?
No, we received a couple payments in the first years, both us and Wadsworth, and we're not receiving anything of late.
Any further? Now those, and I guess the question is, those receipts and fees, what are they being used for? I guess, you know, if we make up the lion's share of the population, about 80 to 90,000, you would think that maybe not so. The 911 calls are coming from individuals, at least from our communities. Of course, the townships will have their, and the other villages will have their calls coming from them. But I guess I don't know what the answer is. There's been discussion back and forth with the commissioners, and they're here. You know, what is the issue with this money? How come it's not, as it maybe we view it, allocated proportionally or equitably to what we think it is? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. There's been people on the committee. I don't know if anybody from Wadsworth who serves on that committee, or maybe you have some answers with respect to what's been discussed.
I'll try to address some of the thoughts there, just for purposes of information. As of December of 2013, Medina County, like all 88 counties in the state of Ohio, have received disbursements through the wireless cell phone 911 tax. As of December of 13, Medina County had received $3.2 million since November of 2005. There are different county plans throughout Ohio that talk about the disbursement of those monies to different types of entities within any given county. Most of the time we're talking about dispatch centers. There's a lot of discussion in Columbus. There's a lot of potential revisions to this area of the law that might be coming down the pike. The reality is there's a lot of discussions tied to the idea of collaboration. There may be, through the legislative process, what some might call forced collaboration within counties based upon a reduction of PSAP centers. But the reality is we know what we can talk about, what's happened in our county, and where we're going. Each one of us who has a cell phone, whether we dial 911 or not, respectfully, Mr. Coyne, we pay 25 cents every month towards the wireless 911 fees. Those go down and are collected, used to be collected by the PUCO. There's now some discussion that it moves to the Department of Taxation, and then those monies are ultimately dispersed back out to all of the counties. The county plans, which were an animal of creation based upon the original legislative act, there is a wide variance in how counties go about dispersing those funds. Some counties have been proactive and used those funds, essentially saving them to provide for upgrades in technology platforms needed by dispatch centers. Some counties have used those funds for training of emergency communication and telecommunicators. Some counties have used those monies for upgrades to actual hardware and software used by dispatch centers. And some counties have used those monies for operational costs. It's all about what your particular county agreement or report says. The reality here is we have had discussions in the past about what's going to happen in Medina County, what the communities and the different interested parties think should happen in the county, but for quite some time we haven't really had much movement in terms of addressing disbursements in our particular county. The reality is all citizens with a cell phone pay the tax every month. Shouldn't all dispatch centers enjoy in those disbursements in order to run operations, pay for upcoming costs, train personnel, do the different things that we're all required to do, not just one particular center in the county, but all of the centers in the county. The reality is We talked about collaboration earlier, and collaboration in the areas in which I am in charge of in the city of Wadsworth, safety forces. It's been a buzzword for a decade in terms of collaboration, whether it be aerial ladder purchases or equipment purchases, or whether it be collaboration of PSAP centers and dispatch centers. The reality is collaboration isn't just brick and mortar collaboration. There's lots of different other avenues on how we can collaborate. So there's lots of things happening in this particular area, but we've been a little bit behind the times in addressing disbursements within Medina County.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. President. Is this a legal interpretation that's subject to legal challenge?
What part? As a lawyer, yes.
Okay, the part where the cities get more money.
Well, I think it is. I think there is open to interpretation. There's lots of different interpretations as to our own county agreement and what it says and what it does not say. I think the reality is, just for the onus of this particular meeting, I think there's an ability between the communities that run dispatch centers and the county commissioners to get together and talk about what's best for our county and what's best to do with these disbursements. The reality has it's been challenging to get those discussions to an area where we might see some progress.
Well, it seems like the goal is very obvious, is to provide a service to the residents of the entire county at the lowest possible cost. And if there's any other ways to fund the cost of providing a dispatch center and paying the employees and the equipment related to the dispatch center, that should be done. Now, it seems to me that if there is the 25 cents per every cell phone, now, of course, we don't know that everybody has a cell phone, but it's kind of odd that you find somebody who doesn't. Again, you go back to the equitable distribution based upon population and the size of the dispatch center and the area by which that dispatch center serves to allocate those costs, in my mind. But you are correct. Maybe, we don't want to put the commissioners on the spot now, but maybe we should revisit those discussions with respect to the allocation and try to figure out a way that we can better use those funds to help. Because I think the answer to the question is, as we know, all dispatch centers can always use the additional help. The thing that we don't want to have happen in each of our communities is to provide a service and have a call come in and we're not able to provide that call either because of the equipment is getting old and it breaks down or something of that occurs and we're not providing that service that we should. Now, of course, these are all wireless calls that come in from 911 and they're all over various areas of the county, and there's probably 911 calls that come in from residents outside the county, I would imagine. But there's ways that we have to pay for these services that we should revisit and maybe have discussions with the commissioners, because I believe the commissioners, they want to provide the service the best they can to the whole county. Maybe there's a way we can, discuss that a little further.
Another issue with this is it's recognized that the equipment that now is being provided through the dispatch is going to be needed to be replaced or upgraded in the very near future. And so I think the discussions also need to surface around that particular aspect, is the recognition of the need for improvement. Technology goes out of service fairly quickly. And so I'm very interested in the long-term plan and how that will be taken care of, because quite frankly, the municipalities have not been receiving any funding. So where is that funding going to be coming from when that needs to be replaced and upgraded?
Well, maybe the answer is with respect to replacement equipment, and maybe there's a way that borrowings could occur with respect to this equipment and acquire that equipment for the various communities, and maybe some of the 911 fee revenue can be used as a revenue system or flow to pay off the debt that's incurred to buy the equipment today. And maybe that's an equitable way to do it, because I guess you're just allocating equipment and maybe not going to operations. Who knows? But you're right. The equipment goes out, technology changes, and you have to pay for it. And the question is, where does it come from?
Mr. Quinn, if I could just expand upon what Mayor Laba identified there. It's not all gloom and doom in the area of dispatch centers. The reality is, as a county, we've been somewhat progressive as you measure us against other counties. For a long time, we have collaborated in the PSAP operations. The way we've done that is what I would call is there's a technology backbone, if you will, in any dispatch center. All of the dispatch centers use a sole source or technology backbone. That's what Mayor Labaugh referenced. We have been notified by our vendor some time ago that that particular backbone equipment will no longer be serviced. There's a large cost to move to the next generation of that particular equipment. In other counties, every single dispatcher center would be replacing those. But for a long time, we've worked together collaboratively as a county and used one backbone piece of equipment to do that. The reality is that equipment needs replaced, and it needs replaced sooner rather than later, and that's an onus for this particular issue. Perhaps as important as all the issues on your agenda this evening, this needs to begin the discussions and get back to a discussion of what's happening. The reality is the disbursement, those funds, they're being used on an annual basis, but we know we have this big bill looming in the background. The other thing that's happening on a technology side is with the advent of more and more different pieces of technology, we have to upgrade our centers to receive next generation 911. That's the texting, the photos that phones can take, all the other forms of technology that you now may report a 911 or an emergency incident to a center with. We don't have the capabilities that we need to have as we move forward.
One question. Is the sheriff's department tied in with this as well?
Mr. Darlington, that is the county dispatch center is run by the sheriff's office. That is also the locale of that joint IT backbone equipment, if you will.
Just a little bit of history, because I've probably been here through this. There was a technical advisory committee that was made up of the police chiefs and the sheriff, and at the time, this is back before 2005, the cell towers that we have today were not all in place. So the question came to the three cities, if we get a cell phone call, we are going to have a difficult time determining is that in Medina City or Brunswick City or Wadsworth City. So the determination, I was on the technical advisory committee as the police chief at the time, the decision then was that they would route them through the sheriff's department originally, determine what the precise location was through conversation, and then transfer that to the appropriate public safety answering point. So then, in addition to that committee, you have what's called the technical advisory committee makes recommendations to the next level, which is the planning committee, which is made up of the mayor of the county seat, the mayor of the most populous city, which was Brunswick, and a county commissioner. So those decisions were made back then. However, and Matt can correct me if I misstate this, what we found is that they were never adopted by the Brunswick City Council or the Medina City Council, and in our opinion, that makes the plan as it was submitted to the state of Ohio invalid, because it did not follow the proper protocol and law. And that was shared with the commissioners through numerous discussions. In fact, two of the three members of the Planning Commission, which started as Carl DeForest before Jim Lucas was there, and then Jim Lucas and I both voted against spending any more of the 911 cellular dollars, which has been ignored by the county, and they continue to expend the dollars year after year, with all of the money going to the sheriff's department. And we feel it's unfair, it's unreasonable, and we've requested over and over again, we can talk about having more meetings, but so far the meetings have been on deaf ears.
Well, is there I guess there could be like a legal way to solve the problem through some type of court action or filing with the court to give a court order to resolve that matter, and maybe collectively we could chip in on that cost to have that occurred. If the commissioners, of course, are listening here, if we don't get anywhere, I mean, they're all representatives also, because they're county commissioners and we're all part of the county. And if that doesn't solve, I mean, we have to be able to do what we believe is best for our constituents within our own jurisdictions. But Pat?
Thank you. When Jim Lucas was our city manager, he looked into this about 3.5 years ago, and I researched what I had on that. We were told at that point in time that per Ohio Revised Code Section 4931.65 requires that the E911 funds go to primary service answering like your points like you had mentioned. We, of course, would like them to come to the secondary or the city. So I was wondering, does that still stand? Do you know if that 4931.65, the Ohio Revised Code, is still the determining factor, or has there been amended to that, or is this still hold true?
That is still the law, however, it's not defined as primary PSAPs. There is a question as to whether just primary or secondary answering points can share in that funding. In many other counties in the state of Ohio, pursuant to their county plan, all functioning dispatch centers share in disbursements of 911 dollars. So it's open to interpretation, as Mr. Hyder said. There's some opening there. I do know that there are definitions being worked on as to what a primary and secondary PSAP center is, and they may not even call it a secondary center. They may call it a different name altogether.
Well, I guess the answer to the question is we don't have an answer currently, but I think the law directors should look at this. I guess, I think everybody here wants to do what's fair, what is equitable amongst the county and the cities, and there has to be a solution to the problem. The answer to the problem is not all one jurisdiction, whether it be the county or one city, get allocated all those funds. It's probably true it should be based upon the dispatch centers and the services provided, because anybody doing the 911 call, whether through the cellular phone with these funds, they don't care where the call goes. They just want to make sure somebody answers. And whatever the law provides, of course we'll follow that. But if that is not the way it should be as it's currently being operated, we should definitely pursue and try to make it as equitable as possible for each community. So I don't know what the next step would be. I know we've had numerous discussions, and maybe we have one more discussion with the county commissioners, have some representatives, whether it be the law directors with the county prosecutor's office, or how we handle it. But maybe do one more shot, and then if we have to solve the problem, we just can't keep going in abeyance here and doing what we're doing, because it appears that the cities are not happy with the current situation, and there has to be a better solution. So maybe that's all we can do right now. And if the solution cannot be through agreement or through cooperative efforts, again, as a lawyer, litigation is always the way to go. But you can always try that. Is there any other questions regarding the 911? I mean, I think the direction's pretty clear. I think another discussion should be with the commissioners here, a meeting scheduled with them, and if we don't feel as collectively representatives of the three cities that the answer is fair and equitable, we have another avenue that maybe we should think about how we can collectively pursue that avenue instead of one of us individually doing it. Okay, the last item we have on the agenda is another hot topic. The casino revenues. As we know, Ohio has casinos now, and revenues generated from the operation of those casinos are distributed to the 88 counties. And as shown on the handout, I think we're up to 2014, an estimated about $2 million, a little over, on casino revenues going to the county. And the question is, well, where does that money get distributed? Not all counties are made up of cities and townships. I think Cuyahoga County has most municipalities. How are their money distributed? Is it equitably based upon population? Or how is the money distributed amongst the various political subdivisions? And I don't know if anybody's heard anything, has any ideas on that, thoughts, because I think currently, correct me if I'm wrong, the commissioners obtain that money and they keep that money. The question is, well, should we, as a political subdivision of the county, receive a portion of that, because we have residents who are here also. So does anybody have any thoughts on that? I understand your thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, I brought it up when Mr. Lucas was our city manager, and he took it to the commissioners, and they said no. We are the biggest community in the whole county, Brunswick. We should get the lion's share.
Well, you're also
we should be supplying, everyone should be getting money off of this. It shouldn't be going into the commissioners' pockets, into their coffers. It should be going to our coffers.
I understand, I guess not all of it, but a proportionate share of that, maybe. You're correct. I mean, you are the closest community towards the casino in Cleveland, so maybe people...
And we also have a bus that stops in Brunswick and picks people up to take them to the casino.
So, maybe you're contributing more to the ultimate distribution of that. But I guess that's a question for the commissioners to discuss that. Now, I don't know if there's a legal or an Ohio Revised Code section that dictates the distribution, or is it purely up to the commissioners to make a determination how that's distributed. Maybe that's something else we can look at to make a determination. But I think all of us here, as representing the three cities and our residents, we'd like to see a certain type of funds come to us from that because it's truly probably based upon population. In my mind, as far as the allocation of those shares, not all the money should be going to the townships when, half the population or a little less of the county is made up of city residents. But Mayor?
I'm just going to mention a couple things, and Mayor Hannawell could equally speak to it, as well as several that were involved with this. Myself and Mayor Hannawell, as well as Jim Lucas. We also had actually Matt and our safety director and our service director, Chris Easton, at the time. We did meet with a representative from the county commissioners as well as Mr. Jacobs and discuss this very issue. We've had many conversations and letters going back and forth voicing that concern. There is specific legislation, obviously, when the casino issue was passed that defines the percentages and where the dollars are to go. But I just looked in front of me here. I've got 51% of the gross casino revenue would go to a county fund. Now, if there is a community within your county that has a population of 80,000 people or above, they were to actually get the lion's share of those dollars. Because we do not have a community that in and of itself is 80,000 or above, we did not qualify for that. Now, obviously, if you add the populations of Wadsworth, Medina, and Brunswick, you have that over 80,000 people. And so our reasoning was the same as what you're saying, is that we are representing a large percentage of the population. And so we certainly have voiced that concern and had several discussions, let's say, but let's just say that it didn't go any further than this. We did go, and I was actually absent that day, but I think, Mayor, you might have been there, to the hearing for the budget, and we presented before the commissioners.
Right, so what they asked the cities to do, I can't tell you why, was to come to their budget process and present it as a budget request. So Wadsworth, Jim Lucas from Brunswick, and myself made a presentation and shared with them all of the services that each of the cities are providing, from police to planning and zoning to building, that would otherwise fall on the county to provide, in an effort to say, we are providing all these services and it's work that you do not have to fund. We should be getting a share of this. And they thanked us, and I think we got a letter later, a week or two later, and said thanks for the information, but we're keeping the money. So.
Well, I guess the answer is, we can give one more opportunity, but again, maybe we can get a better deal on a lawyer if we pursue both the 911 and the casino monies at the same time. But I mean, we have to solve the problem. I think this is a problem that's contentious. It's an emotional issue, but there should be logic behind it, and our voices should be heard with respect to those the allocation of these funds, both from 911 and casino revenues. And we're not attacking the commissioners, but we believe we have an opinion. They have an opinion. We believe ours is correct, they believe theirs is correct, and that's why we have lawyers, to help solve some of those problems. But maybe that's what it is, and we just have to take it at face value and try to pursue our opinion and our point, and say, we think we're right, and maybe a third party has to make that determination if we're right or wrong, and how that money should be allocated. I don't know of any other solution to that, but I know it's been a contentious issue. It's been an issue, an emotional issue for all the cities involved, because we all believe that we are entitled, based upon the population and based upon the wording of the Ohio Revised Code, that we should have some of those monies allocated to support our services, to do that. And maybe the state thought that when they started cutting the state funding for the municipalities, that you would be making some of that up through the casino funding. Maybe that happens in some other communities or counties, but it's not happening here. But that's something we can look at. And again, that's something I think we should collectively work on. I don't think it's worthwhile for Brunswick or Wadsworth or Medina to work on it separately, because that's not the answer. The answer is we have to speak with one voice, and this is a prime example, both the 911 and casinos, to speak with one voice and make our wishes heard. I mean, does everybody agree with that? Okay. Is there anything else that anybody would like to address with respect to either 911 or casino, or any other item that was not on the agenda or you wish to talk about? Yes, Mr. Carl.
I have a quick item I'd like just to flag. It doesn't have to have any action on it. I'm sure that all three communities are aware that the state has gone after our income tax money a couple different times. I'd just like to bring that up to make sure that we're all on board. If something comes up, that we actually can join forces and basically give the state a message that leave our darn money alone.
Yeah, I think there's also another issue that our finance director has been informing us of, a reallocation, or I can't remember what it is called again, the way they calculate things, and we may be losing some money in one spot, maybe gaining in another, but it depends on your community how you're going to fare with respect to the change in law. And the law will probably change at some point with respect to that. Now, I don't believe the state's going to be taking over the collection process. Let's hope not. I think that'll be left to our own communities. But, you know, who knows? I mean, we're at the mercy of our state legislators and what they decide. But again, they have to answer to the local governments also. So hopefully we can try to, you know, voice our opinion with respect to our impact of our personal income tax collections in our communities.
Mr. Coyne?
Yes, Mayor.
Mr. Carl, we hosted for the Northeast Ohio Mayor's Group a meeting here with the House of Representatives for that region to let them know about the impact. And, you know, they keep being told that it's going to be revenue neutral when everything that we're seeing is not close to revenue neutral. So now it's moved from the House to the Senate to try to work out the details. So Keith Durham, our finance director, is on this finance director's group, and they're asking them to meet with the senators now to try to get the word spread. Now, Larry Obhoff was here for the meeting we had with the House of Representatives, but his region goes all the way down to Ashland. So we're going to have to make a more concerted effort to get everybody within that Senate district here to hear what's going on, to let Senator Obhoff hear what our concerns are and try to push for some resistance through the Senate now.
Thank you, Mr. President. As long as I got two of the commissioners here, in the spirit of cooperation, a couple of years ago, the commissioners came before us with the prospect of a fiber optic ring. And with the issue of funding, the cities were asked to pony up a sizable amount of cash to bond out the last mile of connectivity. And after a lot of hand-wringing and the council's going over and over this, we got it done. The three cities got it done, and we enjoy that fiber optic ring now. So I would like to remind the board that when they came to us with hat in hand, the cities cooperated with them, and all we're asking is the same sort of cooperation in return.
Is there anything else for Brunswick? Anything anybody wants to address? Medina? Anybody?
It's kind of dovetail off of that. I know two of the commissioners are here, and we are a little frustrated in certain areas, but the way I look at it is we're a team. We're all Medina County residents, and John, you made a comment I agree with and don't agree with. We want everything to be fair, and that's what we're trying to do here. One thing I do hate is going to litigation. I'm not an attorney, and I hate spending taxpayer money from one community to the other. So let's work it out at the table and not go to litigation. Thank you.
Anybody else? Wadsworth, anything? Well, I would just like to thank everybody for coming to this meeting, and hopefully we could have it, maybe this meeting once a year. And in the meantime, everybody in their respective communities, try to think of ways, and if you have it before, you can send an email, you know, the respective mayors, council presidents, city managers, whomever you'd like to send it to. But let's think of ways and come up with various ideas. I would definitely like to try to pursue to see if it's worthwhile, the income tax idea, maybe the grant idea or other ideas that we looked at, to see if, you know, how can we do things better? How can we try to save some money collectively, and maybe we can, maybe we can't. There'll be some successes and failures, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to try and try things for our residents and constituents. So hopefully we could do that, and I appreciate everybody's time and effort for this, and I hope you believe it was worthwhile to come here, and we'll try to set up a meeting next year to view this, and we'll put that task force together, and you should be receiving some emails regarding that. So once again, thanks for coming.